Carlos Castaneda. From seeing the essence of the universe, the sorcerers of antiquity went on to see the energy essence of human beings. Don Juan stated that they depicted human beings as bright shapes that resembled giant eggs and called them luminous eggs. When sorcerers see a human being, Don Juan said, they see a giant luminous shape that floats, making, as it moves, a deep furrow in the energy of the earth, just as if the luminous shape had a taproot that was dragging. I told him that I couldn't understand what he was explaining because the configuration that he had called man's band of emanations was something incomprehensible to me. I had pictured it to be like a ribbon placed on the surface of a ball. He said that calling it a band was misleading and that he was going to use an analogy to illustrate what he meant. He explained that the luminous shape of man is like a ball of jack cheese with a thick disc of darker cheese injected into it. He looked at me and chuckled. He knew that I did not like cheese. He made a diagram on a small blackboard. He drew an egg-like shape and divided it in 4 longitudinal sections, saying that he would immediately erase the division lines because he had drawn them only to give me an idea where the band was located in the cocoon of man. He then drew a thick band at the line between the first and second sections and erased the division lines. He explained that the band was like a disc of cheddar cheese that had been inserted into the ball of jack cheese. Now, if that ball of jack cheese were transparent, he went on, you would have the perfect replica of man's cocoon. The cheddar cheese goes all the way inside the ball of jack cheese. It's a disc that goes from the surface on one side to the surface on the other side. Don Juan had the impression that our energy shape keeps on changing through time. He said that every seer he knew, himself included, saw that human beings are shaped more like balls or even tombstones than eggs. But once in a while, and for no reason known to them, sorcerers see a person whose energy is shaped like an egg. Don Juan suggested that people who are egg-like in shape today are more akin to people of ancient times. To perceive energy directly allowed the sorcerers of Don Juan's lineage to see human beings as conglomerates of energy fields that have the appearance of luminous balls. Observing human beings in such a fashion allowed those shamans to draw extraordinary energetic conclusions. They noticed that each of those luminous balls is individually connected to an energetic mass of inconceivable proportions that exists in the universe, a mass which they called the dark sea of awareness. They observed that each individual ball is attached to the dark sea of awareness at a point that is even more brilliant than the luminous ball itself. Those shamans called that point of juncture the assemblage point because they observed that it is at that spot that perception takes place. The flux of energy at large is turned, on that point, into sensorial data, and those data are then interpreted as the world that surrounds us. The energetic fact of the universe being composed of luminous filaments gave rise to the shaman's conclusion that each of those filaments that extend themselves infinitely is a field of energy. They observed that luminous filaments, or rather fields of energy of such a nature, converge on and go through the assemblage point. Since the size of the assemblage point was determined to be equivalent to that of a modern tennis ball, only a finite number of energy fields, numbering nevertheless in the zillions, converge on and go through that spot. Their seeing observations of the assemblage point led the sorcerers of ancient Mexico to discover that the assemblage point shifted position under conditions of normal sleep, or extreme fatigue, or disease, or the ingestion of psychotropic plants. Those sorcerers saw that when the assemblage point was at a new position, a different bundle of energy fields went through it, forcing the assemblage point to turn those energy fields into sensory data and interpret them, giving as a result a veritable new world to perceive. Those shamans maintained that each new world that comes about in such a fashion is an all-inclusive world, different from the world of everyday life, but utterly similar to it in the fact that one could live and die in it. Assemblage point positions and their effects as taught by Carlos Castaneda in private classes. The blue region, where the assemblage point is up over the left shoulder blade, is the position of all of humanity at this time. It's your ordinary daily world. You were born into it, just as chickens are born into a chicken coop to be kept as food for something else. Half of your awareness has become trapped there, concentrated in the internal organs of the flesh. We become so obsessed with the struggles of our physical existence that anything which challenges that view is immediately rejected. Don Juan used the analogy of the island of the tonal. Everything we know and do as human beings is the work of the tonal. Without it, there would be nothing but chaos around us. On that island of the tonal is everything for which we have a word. Everything we can think about, talk about, or write about is contained on that tiny island. Even God and heaven. But the truth of the matter is, the vast majority of reality is contained outside that island, and gradually becomes available for you to perceive as the assemblage point moves down the back through inner silence. The green region is a familiar place even to modern humans. It is the place of bliss and minor visions during meditation, and it's where prayers are answered. You can even visit heaven in this region, or accidentally get a boost to visit God in person. But rarely does anyone go further than this in our modern world, and some classify what comes below this as evil, so as to ward off people from straying beyond this green area. The red region is a vast expanse of endless practical magic. The pieces of your energy body become very vivid there, and will swirl around in front of you, mixing with a jet blackness which sets their edges on fire. In this region, just about anything is possible. You can assemble an entire freeway overpass right there in your room, find a real spirit helper, and send her to drive across that overpass as you watch from below. If you stretch the intense purple puffs of your energy body with your hands, it will often result in shape-shifting you into a beast of immense strength or an insect form that can fly away. This is not done with the eyes closed or sitting down. You do this walking around with your eyes wide open and absolutely sober. This region is so alluring, it is considered a place to avoid prolonged contact with by advanced sorcerers. There is just too much you need to see past this. You can't afford to dwell in what is called the shift below. If you manage to shun the shift below, despite all the power it gives you, a crucial moment comes in the movement of the assemblage point. It changes sides on the body. From below, it rises up the front, into the orange area. There's a vast region there where you have a choice. To go back to the intense magic of the red region when needed, or to forge ahead into the phantom realms, where a whitish light dances on surfaces, inviting you to view alien worlds. When the assemblage point is soundly in the front of your body, it becomes possible to assemble those phantom alien worlds you could only barely perceive before. And if you are lucky enough to have an ally, you will occasionally be able to leave your practice room through a solid wall, to venture off into an entirely different world. There is too much to say about this orange region, but the most important thing of all is that somewhere in here is the place of no pity, where you lose all grief, worry, and obsessive concern for that imaginary entity you call yourself. A radical change in your breathing is common here. The body takes over that function, and you are freed from it. The final region explained to us by Carlos Castaneda in a private class was the realm of silent knowledge. He created 2 copy store-bound publications advising us to find this region where we would gain new guidance. Carlos was dying, so he gave us a path to find new teachers, saying all of his companions agreed it was the best thing for us to do. There you will gain teachers like Porfirio from the Eagle's Gift, a powerful Mazatec wizard who perhaps did not actually exist at all in human realms, but who nevertheless taught Nestor to read the mold marks on plants. In this purple region, the shine of your assemblage point aligns to that of your energy body, resulting in all the knowledge men have ever known, currently know, and perhaps even will know in the future, there, floating in the air above you. The methods by which you can perceive this knowledge are endless and can even be confusing, so Carlos and Don Juan advised us to find a slowly spinning whirl of purple light with jet blackness moving around it, lighting up an intense pomegranate dot from which text could be read. The idea was that text requires no interpretation, and so it's a better way for beginners to view raw, silent knowledge. In the early books it's called seeing. Don Juan explained that the old sorcerers were capable of distinguishing two types of assemblage point displacement. One was a displacement to any position on the surface or in the interior of the luminous ball. This displacement they called a shift of the assemblage point. The other was a displacement to a position outside the luminous ball. They called this displacement a movement of the assemblage point. Carlos asked, what happens when the assemblage point moves outside the energy shape? Does it hang outside, or is it attached to the luminous ball? Don Juan answered, it pushes the contours of the energy shape out, without breaking its energy boundaries. Don Juan explained that the end result of a movement of the assemblage point is a total change in the energy shape of a human being. Instead of a ball or an egg, he becomes something resembling a smoking pipe. The tip of the stem is the assemblage point, and the bowl of the pipe is what remains of the luminous ball. If the assemblage point keeps on moving, a moment comes when the luminous ball becomes a thin line of energy.